This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, I'm Gary Bowles. I'm the author of The Next Rules of Work, and I'm the chair for the future of work with Singularity University. And my guest is Vint Cerf, one of the few people on the planet who literally needs no introduction. Vint, thank you so much for joining me today.
Gary, it's always a pleasure to chat. I always come away having learned something new.
Oh, and I feel the same way. So it's wonderful to have such a long history of collaboration. So Vint, you have a breathtaking perspective on so many things, obviously on the internet that connects us all, but also on issues related to work. You were a catalyst for I4J and other global communities that are focused on some of these seismic transformations that we're going through. So we've just gone through a quarter century, or sorry, a quarter decade of dealing with a pandemic. We're not, hopefully we're emerging, but not quite yet there. But what would you think of as your top 2 or 3 insights of what we've learned so far in adjusting to this pandemic as it relates to work?
Well, thank you for asking that. A bunch of things immediately come to mind. The first one is that we discovered that not all jobs can be done remotely. I mean, we knew this implicitly, but it became intensely obvious when people said were told you can work from home if you wish. Many people said my job doesn't permit that. And so that was important. The fact that people could not work in proximity to each other caused supply chains to break because of that. An example would be a meatpacking plant where people are, adjacent to each other in a production line, and they were at risk of infecting each other, which in fact they did. So we learned very quickly that not all jobs can benefit from remote work, but that some could. I believe, in fact, that there will be a lingering and long-standing requirement that we accommodate remote as well as in-person interaction, because in a sense, we've discovered it's doable. We're doing it right now as we speak. And for people who could not travel for whatever reason, uh, this system of remote access enables them to participate in ways that they might have been shut out of if we were to go back to the exclusive, everybody needs to come to be in person to have a meeting. And so this notion of mixed and hybrid mode, which by the way is the most difficult of the ways in which to interact with each other, it's very hard to have some people remote and some people in person. And yet I think we're going to be forced to accommodate that. I think the last thing I would say is that it also became very apparent that if you didn't have access to the internet, then you didn't have any choice about working remotely. And it only emphasized the importance of getting internet into people's hands everywhere in the world in a sustainable and affordable way that had adequate capacity and other properties to allow people to use it in all the varied ways in which we've had to use it for the past 2.5 years. So a few lessons among many.
No, absolutely. And that last one obviously resonates with me. I mean, you know that I've wrote an article over 2 years ago called The Great Reset. And what happens with these resets, and we go through these really big waves of change, it exposes the flaws in the ways, our connectivity and our infrastructure, and it shows that those who are least advantaged become even less advantaged. And so it's been quite clear that without connectivity, that you can't participate in this newly distributed world. Now, Vint, you've been involved in groups like I4J and the People-Centered Internet (PCI) for some time. What has driven your interest in issues related to work? I mean, obviously, it's understandable why you care about connectivity, but what are the issues related to work and learning that have been most resonant for you?
Well, first of all, because of my involvement in internet, it's been interesting over the past literally 50 years now to see how people have used this capability, which has expanded over time in its functionality. The part that I found quite interesting, of course, is the way people make use of YouTube. or the Google search, and I'm not trying to sell you anything. There are other suppliers as well. But I see people saying, how do I do X for some value of X? And they get back either a direct answer from Google or a reference to a YouTube video that tells them how to do X. And what has amazed me is this immediate response to training. In other words, that I need to learn how to do something. I am motivated to learn how to do it right now. And now I learn how to do it and I apply it right away. It's very different from the kind of go to class, learn many, many things, which someday might turn out to be useful. So the reinforcement of immediate use of what you learned is quite striking. And it makes me think that as we consider education in the future, we might want to understand why and how to create that experience more often, because of the reinforcement and of the value of learning is so powerful.
So I actually, the label or the way I think about what you're talking about is, I call it just in time and just in context learning, right? It's you encounter a technical problem. You don't say, wait a minute, I'm going to go back for a 4-year IT degree. Right. No, young people pull out their digital distraction devices and they watch a YouTube video and they solve the problem that's right in front of them, right? So
this raises a couple of other interesting things. I mean, while we're talking about technology and education, although I am not quite as frantic about the Web 3.0, which I think is a marketing term, or the metaverse, which is another marketing term, but the idea of being in a 3D environment is not a new idea. It's been around for a while, Second Life and even things before that. But we're getting to the point where those environments are quite feasible. Both the virtual reality and augmented reality, or what some people call extended reality, to kind of incorporate all of them. But the reason that turns out to be so interesting is that it is a form of encounter that's quite powerful, especially augmented reality, where you're getting additional side information about what is going on around you, or what you're looking at, or what you're hearing. The other thing which I think people are beginning to cotton onto is that internet and its applications are allowing them to do things they could not otherwise do. I'm language disabled for most of the languages of the world, and yet Google Translate has made me capable, within some constraints, to engage with other correspondents in a language that I don't speak or read. And you can replicate many other applications like that are heavily compute intensive, which you can use in very powerful ways without having to know very much. I mean, the idea of being able to cut, paste, and stick something into a website and have it translated for you, or have your email automatically translated, which is what my Gmail does, is really powerfully enabling. And we don't even think about it because it's just automatically engaging. It's sort of like the difference between a stick shift and automatic drive, where the car figures out which gear you should be in.
Yeah. And what ends up happening with a lot of those technologies is we sort of just bake them into our process. And as humans, we are far more adaptable than we give ourselves credit for. And suddenly we become so dependent upon them that we can't envision not having them, right? And so we keep on sort of layering up. When you think about what we've done in the pandemic, do you think, is there anything you think that we can't go back from? Like, do you feel like we've just sort of, we've broken the seal on new ways of working that organizations and people have to continue to embrace?
Well, we touched on that a little bit as we discovered that working from home was feasible. But the side effects of this are, is your home suitable to work in? I mean, you have a room where you can be quiet and isolated from everybody else. Are you fighting with the kids over the capacity of the Wi-Fi system or the internet access? Do you all have the necessary equipment in order to use it, or are you arguing over a laptop or something? There are all kinds of conditions that have to be satisfied in order to be able to make use of these remote kinds of operation. So I'm anticipating that the same thing that happened when desktops became popular and available, people had to figure out where to put them. And eventually you found people building houses with a place to put the computer. And so I'm imagining that this experience of working from home and learning from home will probably lead to interesting changes in the way houses are constructed, so that it takes into account the possibility that you might end up having to work or learn from home. And so we can
So
see that. We might anticipate that happening as we watch what house design looks like.
it's funny you should say that. And mentioned the metaverse stuff. Our 26-year-old son in his condo in DC, he doesn't want to have a dining room table because that's the space that he's mapped out for the 3D gaming area.
I have a 44-year-old son who tells me that he exercises with the 3D headset on. There's the sparring partner, and my first reaction was, well, how do you keep from tripping over your chair or falling through the picture window? And the answer is that the system lets you pace out the spaces that are safe, and then it will give you visual clues that you're close to the edge and don't go any further.
Right.
So
right.
That actually works, and I'm quite surprised to see that. So I'm sure that we're going to see similar sorts of adaptations.
No, absolutely. So now then a lot of these your insights around the seismic changes that we're going through are so helpful. If I were to give you a magic wand, so much of your focus, especially with groups like the People-Centered Internet, if I were to give you a magic wand, how would you make sure that work and learning are more human-centric going forward? Do you have any insights about what should be different in 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think we need to understand the nature of engagement. We have to understand what it makes it possible to engage. How can you be present, especially in these various alternative ways? You and I are having a what I hope is an interesting and useful conversation for others to listen to. But the fact that we know each other already and we've broken bread together helps a lot to let us fill in the flatness of the experience with our already known three-dimensional thing. One thing I will tell you that I didn't appreciate until I came back to my office here at Google is that when you are physically present, you don't have to sit in this damn chair in front of the camera and avoid moving, out of the field of view and all this other stuff. You can actually get up and pace and walk around and go to the whiteboard and have a giant argument instead of being trapped. And I had not appreciated how limiting this particular medium has tended to be. So whether we ever get to real holographic interaction, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that the holodeck is some distance into the future somewhere. What I've learned is that as good as these online environments are, face-to-face has some real value to it, important value to it, that we don't really get no matter how hard we elaborate on these remote experiences.
No, absolutely. Maybe the gateway technology is when a webcam is merged with a micro drone that can follow us around the room, to the whiteboard. So.
I don't know. Having a little drone in space, it does not strike me as being.
Yeah, maybe not.
I mean, this reminds me. What if it's one of those killer drones or something? I've had the experience of meeting with the Defense Intelligence Agency head once, and I was facing the window, and that location is where they maintain the presidential helicopters. And so they're always doing various and sundry exercises. So we're having this discussion, and all of a sudden this helicopter rises up and it's facing me in the picture window. And it was everything I could do to avoid diving under the table after having watched too many movies where the next thing the helicopter does.
Yes, is attack. Yes. All right. So maybe not technology like that. But I know our time is short. One last question with just hopefully a quick answer. You and I think are both optimists. What gives you hope as you look forward to the post-pandemic world?
I see enormous creativity that has gone into our coping with the pandemic. I still see lots and lots of hard problems that need attention. but I see a kind of extraordinary toolkit arising out of computer-based capability that enhances our capacity to solve problems and to execute at scale. And so I'm optimistic that we have the wherewithal to solve a lot of these problems with a lot of help from properly configured computing resources and communication resources.
Well, that's a wonderful note to end on. Vint, thank you so much, as always. Amazing conversation, and look forward to the next one. Thank you so much.
Same here, Gary. I look forward to breaking bread once again.